Hello, and welcome to another Sports Next Door podcast. My name is Owen. Today is Thursday, June 17th, and I am joined, as I always am, by my neighbor Max. How's it going, my friend?
Very well. We're recording a little earlier, by 3 hours, 5 p.m. instead of 8 p.m. And that's because I have some social plans on the night, heading to a bar for, I guess I must have gone out at some point last summer for drinks, but it feels like the first time in about 14, 15 months.
Yeah, and I went to a patio last summer as well, but it has been a long time. Definitely a feeling that I miss, and I'm happy for you. That's going to be good. Things starting to open up a little bit more. I think Dougie hinted at phase 2 arriving sooner than planned as Canada passes Israel to become the highest percentage vaccinated population on planet Earth. So ups to us here.
Yeah, really picked up the pace there. It's so funny to compare the stats with the US for, like, I think somewhere around 50% of our population only has one shot, whereas somewhere like 10% of their population only has one shot. Just you see like the vaccine hesitancy and stuff like that. But yeah, we're rolling, and the numbers seem to be reflecting that in cases, hospitalizations, all that nasty stuff going way down, and loving it.
Absolutely. Toronto General Hospital, for the first time since the beginning of the pandemic, had 0 COVID patients in the ICU yesterday, which is just absolutely incredible news.
Yeah, we're not done, but the light's getting very bright at the end of the tunnel.
Definitely. And what it reflects well in is things are going to start opening back up. And with that, hopefully we'll have our sports teams moving north of the border back to where they belong. I'm excited in a month from now to go see a live sporting event here in London. That'll be good. And maybe the Jays come back by the end of the summer. Maybe the MLS comes back by the end of the summer. Who knows what else is going to be on the table, but it's just nice to see things slowly opening up and us having the opportunity to get back to normal life, whatever that may be at this point in time.
And for the first time, we don't have to hold our breath when everything opens up. Like, man, I sure hope people are wearing masks and social distancing and not meeting more than like 5 people in their life at all, or else this is all going to collapse very quickly, which is what's happened every time we've opened up before, but
Yeah.
a lot more optimism on this one.
For sure. I think I'm still going to employ some of those measures, though, going forward in normal life. I was always someone who did not like touching handles, doorknobs, gripping the bars on the subway, but that is not just like germs. That's just plain nasty. So, yeah, definitely. I think masks, at least the good thing that comes out of this is they're at least more normalized. So if someone is actually sick and wears a mask, they're not going to get ridiculed for it, and nor should they have ever been. But we don't really need to go down that path. Let's talk some sports, shall we?
All right.
We're going to kick it off with a little chat about the Euro Cup over this past week. We have a quick Combat Corner, some basketball, absolutely crazy week in the NBA. News flying fast and furious. We'll talk round 3 series in the NHL, a little bit of tennis talk, and finish up. I have a quick note. Actually, I'll just say it right now. The Jays bullpen is bad. That's all you really need to know from baseball talk. So let's talk some soccer, shall we? Quickly running through my notes here. I don't know if you saw this, Max, but Czech Republic with an early goal of the tournament nominee against Scotland, unfortunately. Cool to see all of our clansmen in the stands wearing their kilts, drinking beer, having a great time. But Czech Republic, quick turnover around midfield, and the guy just launches a perfectly placed bomb from just across the midfield line. The keeper, who was out of his net, as you're supposed to as a keeper, when your team has a ball and is across half, you come out so that is, if there is a ball played through, you can be the last line of clearance. but he's off his line and the ball goes perfectly over him running back and falls into the net. And Czech Republic ends up taking that game, but it was a great goal, and definitely one that, unless we get something truly spectacular in the coming weeks, that might be the number one goal of the tournament. Our first, the tournament has lacked upsets so far. We've been close a couple times ish, but for the most part, the heavyweights have established themselves. I guess the most upset worthy result so far of the tournament is that Sweden was able to play Spain to a draw, but even then, that is not unheard of in football to have ties, especially in such a low scoring event game. But that's a big result for Sweden as they look to advance into the round of 16. And if you can at least get a point out of one of the top teams in the tournament, then you got to feel good about that. I'll move on to some of the heavyweights who were able to establish dominance. The first of which is Portugal, who was scoreless the entire game. And there was some worries that they were reverting into pre-2016 Euro Portugal, where they just were unable to deliver time after time. And Hungary, late in the game, had a goal that was called back on offside, clearly offside. But it was definitely time where Portuguese fans were holding their breath, and then they broke through. The last 10 minutes of the game, Portugal scores 3 times. Ronaldo with a penalty, and he had a very, very nice finish for his second goal of the match, and he becomes the all-time leader in goals in the Euro Cup finals, which is what they call the tournament. And he is, as much, whatever you think about him, he does the most important thing in soccer, and that's score goals. So you got to give it up to him. He's still 80 goals away from even reaching Christine Sinclair atop the leaderboard of all-time international goals scored. So got to put some respect on our Canadian hero's name there. The biggest match of the first round of games in the group stage was between Germany and France, and these two were pretty tightly contested, and the separator of this game was an own goal early in the match by Germany's Matt Hummels. Tried to clear it off his out of his box on a cross and just punted it straight in the top corner of his net. It was really unfortunate. It's not as egregious as we saw from the Haitian goaltender this week, with one of the worst own goals you may ever see in Canada's second win over Haiti, allowing them to qualify, but I'll get to that. But Hummel's still an unfortunate own goal. Germany can't find any offense. France actually had 2 more goals that were drawn back from offside, and they look very menacing as an attacking team. Of course, when you've got the 2-headed monster of Mbappe and Benzema up front, it's kind of a mixture of pure power and then speed and finesse on either side there. And then Griezmann as well had a wonderful match for France. And so that's a big result for them to get 3 points in the group of death, sets them off on the right foot. And now if you're Germany, you need to win against Portugal primarily. And then like it is absolute must win against Hungary in order to keep pace in the group. We'll talk Italy, who I think has made their biggest statement of the tournament so far. Both games that they've played so far, Turkey and Switzerland, 3-0 wins. And they hadn't scored 3 goals ever in the Euro Cup finals before this tournament. So 2 really big results for them, and showing it's a younger squad, but they're showing the world that they've come to win. And it's always a great time if your team is heating up on the biggest stage. And obviously Turkey and Switzerland, not the strongest of opponents, but they're definitely not pushovers. And so great results for Italy there to kick off their tournament. And then I guess the last game I wanted to talk about was today's game, Belgium coming back and picking up the win. It was a tight one, and they completely fell asleep. Denmark scores in the second minute of the game off a turnover really early. And Belgium was lifeless in that first half. And then Kevin De Bruyne, who suffered a face fracture in the Champions League final, comes in at halftime as a super sub, and he sets up the game tying goal and then scores the game winning goal. And that secures Belgium's spot already in the group of 16. Now they just want to make sure that they're that number one seed in their group heading into the knockout stage. But that's a really, really big win for Belgium. And Kevin De Bruyne showing that he is at the top of his game after coming off a pretty nasty injury. Obviously doesn't hurt his conditioning, but it's never nice to have a fracture in the facial area. It makes it tough to see, breathe, whatever you want to do. It's unpleasant. So that's kind of a quick wrap up on the Euro. But now I wanted to talk about soccer news here in Canada. A historic win for Team Canada. Is the first time that they qualify for the final round of FIFA World Cup qualifying in 25 years. They beat Haiti in Haiti, and then they come back to Canada for the second leg of the matchup. Actually, I don't know if they played in Canada because they're not allowed to cross borders. So they probably played in the States somewhere. And they pick up another win. And Max, did you see this own goal?
No.
Oh my God. So it's passed back to the Haitian keeper. He goes to touch it. The ball rolls by him. So he's chasing it to try and clear it off his line because it's about to roll into the net. And he attempts to kick it and he misses the kick and his off foot tips it into the net and he stumbles over. It's one of the worst own goals I have ever seen. And the big news coming out of this one was, does he have a little bit of money on the side? Or did he tell his buddies to put a little bit of money on this side, trying to make some money off of this game because it looked like Canada was the better side? I don't know if you're looking it up right now. It looks like you are, but I want to get your reaction after you watch this. I'll keep talking a little bit.
All right, I've got it here.
So Canada enters the octahedron, which is the final round of qualifying for the World Cup, and they are in an 8-team group along with Jamaica, Mexico, Panama, Costa Rica, El Salvador, USA, and Honduras. And so he just saw it, folks.
Wow. That looked like your stoned buddy who forgot he was in a soccer match remembered at the last second.
Yeah,
wow.
Pretty brutal. Pretty brutal. And it was a big goal in that moment too for Canada.
Yeah, that put them up 1-0.
Yeah. They ended up winning 3-0, but that was it's a pretty demoralizing goal if you're Haiti. So Canada enters the octahedron. It's 14 games, so you play every other team in your pool twice, as the World Cup's 2 years from now, so they have all year to do this. And the top through, if I understand it correctly, the top 2 teams in the pools, just based off pool play, instantly get a spot in the World Cup. And then it'll be the remaining 4 teams playing in a elimination match between each other. So I believe it's 3 versus 6 and 4 versus 5. And the winner of those 2 games also get a spot. 4 bids in total for the World Cup from North and Central America. So Canada's got essentially, like if you just look at 4 spots, 8 teams, they've got a 50% chance. I'd say it's probably a little lower than that because they are definitely an underdog, but they've got a shot. And at the very worst, this is a build up towards 2026 where they are co-hosting with the US and Mexico and trying to get their first World Cup bid. And it would be pretty remarkable. So we're cheering the boys on. Alphonso Davies, Jonathan David, Kyle Larin have all been awesome. And just hoping that they can keep it rolling going forward.
Sweet. Go boys, go.
Alrighty, Max. Do you want to just jump right into your combat corner here? I was on Twitter today and I saw something that I ended up not wanting to see, but I saw it's the zombie, right? He pulled off the twister.
Yeah.
In one of his previous matches. That actually made my back hurt watching that. But why don't you give us a preview of what's coming up this weekend?
Yeah, this main event between Korean zombie Chan Sung-jung and Dan Ige, the more I think about it, the more similar these fighters seem to me. They've both got this crazy one-punch knockout power to start. We saw that on display when Ige unfortunately massacred our fellow Canadian and boy Gavin Tucker. And we've seen that from Zombie several times in his last couple fights against, not Bektik, excuse me, against Frankie Edgar and against Hinato Moicano. Both had their most recent loss basically at the hands of being completely technically outboxed. Zombie struggling with Ortega and Ige struggling with Cater. And both are primarily strikers who have good grappling, but will use it typically more defensively. It's not the first weapon they pull out of their arsenal. And I almost forgot, both have near immortal chins. I'm not sure either's been knocked out in their career, but they've certainly both taken some absolute bombs and kept on fighting. So I don't know how this match is going to go, because that sets up so many questions. I guess the first and the biggest one would be whose striking has progressed more. I said they both got technically outboxed. It was in different ways. For Ige, his loss came really at the straight technical distance management of Cater. He just found his range where he was able to throw jabs and straights and stay out of the way of Ige's more wild swinging hooks. And those straights and jabs were just money in the bank throughout the fight, and they accumulated more and more, giving Cater a bigger and bigger margin to land more shots and making it harder for Ige to figure out what to do in there. Chan Sung Jung, the Korean Zombie, also losing in a sort of building momentum way to Brian Ortega, who just was insanely crisp with his movement, his combos, in and out, able to read everything Zombie threw at him. It felt like Zombie was really coming, like letting those last couple wins go to his head of, I just need to touch this guy and he's out, and trying to find that one perfect wind up and land blam shot. And Ortega had the movement with his feet, with his head, to not get touched by those, and just setting up angles, cutting off Zombie and sliding in with these 2-3-piece combos, mixing it up between the jabs, the hooks, the uppercuts. It was a phenomenal performance by Ortega that has me really curious about his title shot. But in the meanwhile, for this fight, it's both. I mean, with Ige, you have him coming off a win, but when you get outclassed for 25 minutes and then you get your hand raised in 7-10 seconds, I don't know if the doubts about your striking prowess go away. And with the chin of both these fighters, I feel like we've more likely than not in for a long one, that you never know how that one shot power might just connect at the right angle in the right place. And you also never know if they might go, hey, I think I've got the advantage on the ground against this guy. So a lot of variables at play in terms of one shot knockout power from both fighters, but really good chins on both fighters. Both fighters primarily strikers, but they have great grappling if they want to use it. If they decide they think they have an advantage there, the striking's not going their way. And I'd say both having recent performances that have left them needing to go back to the drawing board and figure it out. So looking to see some smarter movement from Zombie, some more patience, some more touching strikes, setting stuff up, maybe even taking something out of Ortega's book, but also looking to replicate what Cater did and really like establish range and distance. Don't let Ige too close. Use that jab straight to keep him off. And for Ige, I feel like he really loves his hooks. So replicating Ortega's performance maybe will come a little more naturally, but try not to get stuck at that wrong distance, making sure you have a 25-minute pace, because there's questions if his cardio waned against Cater, and mixing it up with the shots. But this should be a really fun featherweight bout, and I'm really curious how it plays out. I don't know if you want to take a break here or go straight into basketball.
I think we'll break.
All right, we'll be right back then.
And we're back. Sports Next Door. Myself, Owen, alongside my virtual neighbor, Max. And we are here to talk some basketball storylines with you. It has been an absolutely audacious week in the NBA. And there are so many things that we need to talk about and get to, but we will begin with something that we brought up a couple podcasts ago
I think it
about,
was the last one.
yeah, something like that, about the officiating of the NBA and how Trae Young specifically is a talented foul creator. And funny that in response to a lot of complaints from that game, we see a Woj bomb happen on Tuesday where a NBA competition committee met and decided that they are going to put forward to the board of governors of the NBA and the general managers a proposed rule change that would not enable players to get it away with unnatural motions on jump shots that players use to draw fouls. So essentially the rule is changing so that if I'm jumping into someone or jumping to the side and putting up a shot or whatever else might happen, I'm sure they have a couple in particular that they're looking at. Those will be eliminated. And so you're taking away some of the artistry that is the offensive players, but you're also um, making the game a little less herky-jerky and a little bit less frustrating for fans who don't want to see that type of basketball.
Hopefully, you're forcing them to focus that artistry in getting the ball in the basket rather than getting players' hands on top of them.
Yeah, the biggest one that I've heard about and I agree with that is probably the most dangerous one is where guys like Trey, Harden, Mitchell, Luka, they come around a high screen and they've got a defender of pretty large size, right? Working their way around a center, working their butt off, moving as quickly as possible, trying to fight around that screen. And they come around that screen and bam, their guy is standing right there, backing his way into you. And so it creates those dangerous situations for the defending player where they're working their way around the screen. They don't know exactly where the offensive player is until they get around the screen, and they're moving as quickly as they can because they're trying to pick up, and then they just have a wall coming back at them. And so it leads to some collisions. We haven't seen anything too particularly brutal yet, but it was something where I agreed with what I had heard that it's a fairly dangerous situation, and that's something that can be eliminated. You're allowed to protect the ball when you're in the lane. A lot of guys do it really well where they protect, keep the defender on their hip, and then they shoot a floater or set up a pass. But you don't need to be throwing yourself backwards or sideways because that's unnatural. And that's not how you shoot, and it's not how you play within the flow of an offense. And so I like the rule, and I hope that's particularly what they're targeting with the implementation.
Yeah, for me, it's less about player safety and more about enjoyment of the game. Hoping, like I said, to see them use that fantastic explosiveness, athleticism, creativity to try and put the ball in the net while the clock is still going rather than get free throws. And I like this because you start somewhere safe with something that's indisputable and easy, see how that works, and then you hopefully chip further away down the edges and see how much of that style of play you can eliminate. I think it is a really interesting problem, though, in that a lot of times when leagues want to see change, they'll implement more of a bottom up procedure. Okay, let's try putting in all these things like at lower levels of play, see how they go, and then we can implement them here. But this particular thing really is a superstar phenomenon.
Yeah.
It works exceptionally well because it's James Harden, because it's Trae Young, because it's Luka Doncic, because it's Kyle Lowry. I could go on. So even though I'm sure there's some of that going on in G League, college basketball, it's nowhere. I mean, Trae Young hit 17 free throws in game 5. We'll get there. But it's that sort of thing that it's the superstars that like they really need to target with this. So the only place you really can test and try is in the NBA. So it's going to be real time trial and error. So it makes sense they want to proceed as safely as possible in like, let's try the smallest, most blatant target we can and then go from there.
Yeah. It's a great point that it's targeted more towards superstars. And I think primarily the ones most affected by this possible rule change would be smaller players, because that's how a lot of these guys counteract the difference in size, the difference in strength, the difference in height. Is you see when someone's trying to score a basket on Rudy Gobert, they are going right at him into his body in order to initiate that contact so that he isn't coming forward or meeting them vertically. He jumps and he starts going backward with the force of them going into him. That's how a lot of guys counteract when they're going for a layup, as an example. So with this rule, it takes away the ability of the smaller players to use that foul to create space and stop those larger players from hindering them when they're working through whatever the offensive set might be. Trae Young is so great at it because he's in a series where he's going up against Ben Simmons and Matisse Thybulle, two of the best perimeter defenders in the league. They're huge, they're long, they're all in his airspace. And so the way he counteracts that is by keeping them honest, by throwing himself into them and creating that contact, right? Because then they have to be more careful when they're guarding him. That's the little chess match. And so I see the smaller players being affected by it more, whereas Luka doesn't have to throw himself. He can just stand there and keep them on their hip because he's so big. So it'll be interesting to see what the counter adjustment is if this rule change is implemented from a Trae, from a Steph Curry, from a Chris Paul, from a Kyle Lowry, from a John Morant, all those different guys, right? From a Donovan Mitchell, Mike Conley, etc. But for now, we'll see how far this type of offense can take Trae Young in the playoffs. And my guess is in the end, they probably won't change anything because a rule applying to superstars is a tough look when they're the ones who generate a lot of your revenue and people are all over the offense. But definitely something that will be considered pretty seriously.
All right. We'll follow that story closely. But for now, let's move along to some playoff action because we got a lot of craziness.
Yeah. Let's go with playoffs, and then we'll finish up with some housekeeping notes on the NBA. So we'll start with that Philadelphia-Atlanta series that we just mentioned briefly a couple minutes ago. And the Atlanta Hawks, man, have you ever seen a more mentally tough and resilient team making its first playoff run together? I don't think I've seen it before. I mean, Phoenix, I guess, has a couple of guys who are making their first run. It's a really bizarre year, 2021. But this team down 25, down 26, as late as over halfway through the third quarter, down by 18 entering the fourth. And it not only is their brilliance, but it is a truly remarkable Philadelphia 76ers collapse. And now one that has happened twice in this series, not to this degree, but they seem to just fall apart when it comes to the fourth quarter. And so there's so many things to talk about, but I kind of want to walk through a little bit of the sequence of events that happened in that fourth quarter and at the end of that third quarter. Actually, it starts with a late in the third quarter, about 2 minutes left in the third quarter. Atlanta has struggled to generate offense all game, and Danilo Gallinari hits this super, super tough step back jumper from the wing, just a 2-point shot over Ben Simmons. And then from there, Atlanta proceeds to hack a Ben and send him to the free throw line, where he was 2 of 10 up until that point, and made a couple of free throws, but in the end, like, it was just something get in his head. Doc actually takes him out of the game late in that third quarter, so they don't do it. And then Shake Milton comes in the game, Tyrese Maxey's in the game, and they can't generate any perimeter offense against Atlanta, which is counterintuitive, right? Because they actually present a shooting threat. But Atlanta does a great job. Trae was competing on the defensive end at least. He's still not a great defender, but they can't punish the Hawks for not having Ben Simmons on the floor and having more perimeter scoring. And then Trey proceeds to get a couple free throws, sets up another layup, and Atlanta closes on like a 6-0 run to end the quarter. And then coming out, start of the fourth quarter, they are running Trey Young and Lou Williams on the floor at the same time. Well, it starts with just Lou Williams, who absolutely cooks them. He scores like 8 straight points, and they have to call timeout. And then it's Trey Young and Lou Williams, two of the worst like defenders, based purely on stature. And like that's the biggest part, but just they're not great defenders. And there's 2 of them on the court. And all Philly has to attack them with really is Seth Curry, who had a great game up until the fourth quarter. Really great game. But if he's your number one guy creating perimeter offense for your team, then you worry, because Tobias Harris didn't show up. Ben Simmons just disappears.
2 for 4 from the field and 4 for 14 on free throws. I think that was the least amount of attempts on any starter. And like Howard and one other guy had less field goals attempted than him, but like third last out of 9 or so on field goals attempted.
Only Seth Curry and Joel Embiid scored in the fourth quarter for the Sixers. Like it was terrible. They are getting nothing from their bench. And Lou Williams was fantastic. And then Trey Young gets aggressive down the stretch, takes it over, gets a couple free throws, sets up a couple plays. And Philly cannot generate any offense. It's either a Embiid tough fadeaway over Capella, or it's Seth Curry maybe getting a tough shot off. Like their offense was screeching to a halt. It was truly like just horrendous. They tried going to Tobias Harris against Herter a couple times, and Herter was doing a great job competing, trying to deny an entry pass into the post. And then when Harris got it, he was just taking fadeaway jump shots. And when he was attacking, Atlanta was swarming and really protecting the paint and making someone else beat them. And yeah, no quit from this Atlanta team. Trey Young's like remarkable what he did, because he's been having to face 2 really tough perimeter defenders, and he's still working his way, figuring out how to get his points, figure out how to get his assists, keep the whole team engaged, keep the offense rolling. And down the stretch, Trey draws a 3-point shooting foul. It was a legitimate foul, but it's one of those where you pump fake and then jump into the guy and Thibault bites. And then on the other side, Embiid doesn't get a call his way, gets frustrated, and then finally gets fouled late in the fourth quarter with a chance to pull the game within 1, and he misses both the free throws. And that seals the deal. And Atlanta steals game 5. The Philadelphia fans were absolutely shell-shocked. They were trying to teach Ben Simmons how to shoot free throws mid-game. It was, oh man, I cannot imagine being a Philly fan right now, or waking up this morning and all the media. I'm sure it's an absolute firestorm.
Well, you can kind of imagine we're Leafs fans.
It's true. It's so true.
It is. Ugh. This collapse is in that ballpark, though.
Yeah.
That's getting outscored 40-19 in the fourth quarter by the underdog, when like you should be the strong closer. We saw in game 1 that like they let the game slip away from them early and then almost clawed their way back, almost fought back, but like fair enough, it was a big enough margin. But this is something totally different and way, way, way worse.
And now they must win both of these games. Otherwise, changes are coming. I think Simmons is gone if they don't win this series.
Yeah, and his value is probably way lower, like the lowest it's ever been, really.
Yeah, I mean, if you're still a team, though, you'll take Ben Simmons because of some of the stuff he can do with shooters around him.
Of course, but what's on the table is fairly clear and what you're going to get, and that's definitely going to let GMs talk the price lower than it would have been at the trade deadline this season, last season, the season before.
And if you're Houston, why did you not get him when you had the chance? And instead of all these picks and kind of crappy players that you got from the Nets. I didn't understand that. Imagine James Harden right now with Joel Embiid. Would have been so much better. Like still a choking aspect there, but at least James Harden can shoot like at the bare minimum. And so I think Simmons is gone. Who knows how much leash Doc Rivers get, but sneakily he has not been a top tier coach since Boston won the title in 2008. And don't look now, but that'll be 14 years ago by the time the next playoffs rolls around. So, yeah, definitely some introspection there if you're Daryl Morey, seeing if this is the guy you want to continue to roll with.
Something about second rounds for him, eh?
Something about it. It's been a tough hill to climb. All right. Let us move along to the Western Conference, where there was another surprising result. 3 really surprising game 5s, in my opinion. And this was the second of those. Kawhi Leonard out, and they fear he has an ACL tear.
Sprain, I think.
Haven't heard any news yet. Was it officially diagnosed a knee sprain?
I've seen a couple things where it was like tear speculated and then switched to sprain.
Yeah. So I'm still not 100% clear on that, but of course he's probably out for this series. And then if they make it, it'll be day by day. I guess this is why he was load managing by quarter in the playoffs, because just something terrible like this happened, especially so unfortunate after he had one of the most athletic plays I've ever seen with that just posterization of Derek Favors. That was a top 10 in-game playoff dunk. That was pretty sick. And it was those moments that I miss from the Toronto Raptors playoff run. Today is the 2-year anniversary of the championship parade, which was a nightmare day for me, but was really great for everyone else. And he had those couple dunks over Giannis, that one in transition that we'll never forget. And this was one of those moments that he pulled off for the Clippers. And game 5, no Kawhi. And Paul George has redeemed my legacy game, a bit of a redemption game. Now we have to clarify every single time we have the pod, but Paul George has been great this playoffs and he is a great player, but it's just some of the shaky, inconsistent moments he's had really puts a darker spot on his career. But this was a big one for him because the opportunity was there with more touches in an offense where it's designed to go through wings and against a team that doesn't necessarily have the perfect guy to guard him. Royce O'Neal, great defender, a little bit too small. Joe Ingles, Bogdanovich, larger matchup with him size-wise, but just not as fleet of foot as Paul George. And Paul George deceptively has some great attacking moves and is in really tight handle and can create a shot quite effectively. And he goes for 37 in the game. Really clean, really polished. Had a couple hiccups early in the fourth quarter, and you're thinking maybe it was going to happen again for him. But he turns it around, makes a couple late shots, gets some great contribution from Reggie Jackson again. The Clippers really commit to going small, spread out the floor again. Gobert lessens his impact on the game. And if you're Utah, that was one that you let slip away that you couldn't let slip away, because now it just buys LA a little bit more time. If it's a minor injury for Kawhi, he could be back in time for game 7. And Utah really had a golden opportunity to get a pretty important win in front of their fans and have 2 shots at closing it out. But now they got to win both. And those demons are creeping up again for Utah fans about this team that is been the best it's been in a really long time. And yet they still can't get past the second round and move the needle.
I imagine either fan base is going to have headaches, demons, and trauma after the series ends. Although at this point, I think with the Kawhi injury, it's got to feel worse to be a Jazz fan of the 2 possible scenarios.
Yeah, just as the top seed.
Yeah.
Although if you're the Clippers, you worry about losing this series if Kawhi actually just decides, you know what? I came here looking to win right away, and now we haven't done really squat in 2 years. Maybe I'll move on. Maybe I'll go to the Lakers. I don't think he'd do that, but it's a possibility that you fear when you go to bed at night if you're a Clippers fan, because they have not experienced any sort of success as a franchise ever.
And there's no hope for the near term future with all those draft picks gone.
Yes.
So
Oh
it's
my God.
now or like turn off that part of your brain for 10 years and then check in.
Yeah. The winner of this series, whoever that might be, looking like Clippers now, will head to Phoenix. Actually, if it's Utah, they'll stay in Utah, but they will face off against Phoenix and a Suns team that'll most likely be without Chris Paul for the majority of that series.
Now, this confuses me.
It was an absolutely shocking announcement where Chris Paul is entering COVID protocols. So he'll be out indefinitely. I don't know what the rules are at this point, but it's got to be 10 to 14 days at least, right? I think
I don't understand that. Like, surely he's been vaccinated at this point. Surely they can give him a test every day. And if I don't know if he has it, which is one thing, but if he doesn't and he's testing negative every day and he's been vaccinated, I'd think he should be good to play for the third round.
And so I think that's where I think he contracted it, which is shocking, but that is what the rumors seem to be. One NBA player out of 278 left or whatever tested positive last week. And it looks like it's Chris Paul, and it's shocking. It's a reminder that we're still not through the pandemic yet. And
90% is 90%.
Yeah, and it's a huge loss. Like, unbelievable that at this point you're even taking that risk and jeopardizing the chances of your team by going to somewhere where it's not an event that requires vaccination or at least a negative test. Pretty shocking stuff. And I think Phoenix can hang in there, but Chris Paul is truly the leader of that team, right? You saw when he was even just gone for that quarter against the Lakers where the offense just scuffles a little bit more because Chris Paul has everything on a string. He's the ultimate game manager. And especially in a Western Conference Finals, Phoenix is really going to miss that experience and game management. So it's hard to imagine that he's going to be out for an extended period of time, especially if the NBA basically just gave LeBron a free pass. It's kind of wild, but it seems like that's what it's going to be. And Phoenix fans, I want to hear from you guys. Like, this is unbelievable. It was looking up. You're probably the favorites before this news comes out. And now you're missing, I guess, your best player, you would say Chris Paul is. I would say so at this point. And everything just completely changes for your team. It's almost like an injury, right? Which has been the story of these playoffs. Almost every team experiencing a major injury of one kind or another. Basically, if you run through the teams, everyone except kind of Atlanta has a major injury. And
Milwaukee.
Oh, and Milwaukee as well. DiVincenzo. I don't know if that's major, but he's an important part of what they do. Actually, no, Atlanta has DeAndre Hunter. So everyone's got a key injury and some are bigger than others. Of course, you look at Brooklyn, you look at Kawhi being out, and you look at, I guess, Conley is up there too. But for Phoenix now, they joined the club. They were the most healthy team. That's why they had the best shot. And now Chris Paul, essentially, it's an injury. He's out. It levels the playing field somewhat, but it's got to be just excruciating if you're a Suns fan, because it feels so close. And now the hold starts to slip a little bit on Larry O'B.
Yeah, you've still got Booker and Ayton, and they're both good to do very specific things. Ayton versus Gobert would be a very interesting matchup. But if it's the Clippers, then Ayton should have a field day in the paint. And even against the Jazz, defensively, Ayton should be huge in the paint. but the offense is going to struggle there without Paul. And likewise for Booker as a flamethrower, or if he goes up against the Clippers, he'd really be hoping to get some playmaking and creativity from Paul. So one of those guys, either way, whoever they face, is going to struggle to do what they do best without Paul setting it up to help.
I definitely see the Booker situation as similar to the one we're seeing with Donovan Mitchell right now, where it's like a superstar out of this league. They can create their own shot. They're incredible. They can do a lot of primary ball handling, but it gets to a point where without a true point guard like a Conley and like a Chris Paul to share some of the responsibility and weight of bringing the ball up the court every single time, it's just taxing on these guys. They're not used to being the number one ball handler. They're used to being the number one guy, but not the number one ball handler. And those are very different responsibilities, because it's a lot more taxing to have someone picking you up full court and having to expend that energy, bringing the ball up, or having the doubles come at you a lot of times. Whereas Donovan and Booker thrive more so than other superstars with off ball actions as well. So just something to think about. And yeah, I'm still flabbergasted, like almost 48 hours later. I cannot believe that this happened.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's not the smoothest transition, but the other thing that I can't believe happened was Brooklyn winning Game 5.
Yeah. What can you say other than wow?
That is a legacy top 15 player of all time cementing type game, where like very LeBron-esque, where your team is solid and has a couple guys who play in their role well, but your two other stars are gone. Everything is on your shoulders. You need one of your role players to just have a good game. And Jeff Green did that. One of the most awesome games from a role player we've seen in a really long time. I think he had 27 in the game and started 6 of 6 from 3. It's just wild, surprising game from Jeff Green. But Kevin Durant, man, like that is one of the best playoff performances you will ever see from a guy who bailed out Harden really late in that game. Harden kind of just went, we're going to get a shot clock violation this possession because I just feel like dribbling the ball out. Actually, KD, here you go with 2 seconds. KD makes a ridiculous 3-point shot. KD 18 fourth quarter points, finishes with 49, 17, and 10. Like that is better than a LeBron stat line in some of his best games.
I mean, there was KD through the first half where he just put the team on his shoulders and said, okay, nothing's happening here with you guys. I'll just like drag us along and keep us within reach of the Bucks, with plenty of help from Jeff Green, of course. But a lot of those shots coming off KD's play. And then the third quarter where he brought the team well within striking distance. And then I think he had 3 threes in the fourth quarter that were just unbelievable. That one you mentioned, and then 2 others less crazy, but also just unguardable shots.
Yeah.
Like I'm just casually bringing the ball up, still 3-4 feet from the 3-point line, and just going to pull up and launch from 7 feet in the air. Unless you have like Brook Lopez or Giannis sitting at the 3-point line ready to contest that, there's nothing you can do if you're Milwaukee. And I guess you have something to say on that, but I wanted to transition to it wasn't the Bucks defense that let them down, because I think the way KD lit up, you really can't stop that. But the offense, I mean, we said they need to go punch for punch with the Nets, and they built themselves a lead. All they had to do was just score a basket every time Brooklyn scored a basket, and they were unable to do that, especially in the fourth quarter.
Yeah. I'll get back to the offense. I have 2 things on what you just said. One, not only was KD carrying them, Harden and Joe Harris and Shamet and Bruce Brown, they were like dragging the other way. It wasn't just that he was carrying them. They were like trying to actively go in the opposite direction. James Harden was like obviously injured. He was very obviously injured. He had no lift in his shot. He had no explosiveness. He could still make great passes, which is actually something of value in that game, but really was a zero on offense.
He could also flop. He had a pretty significant one that I think to get 2 free throws that put them ahead or a little more ahead. If I had to put like 3 key moments of the game, it would be like the flop, KD's insane 3, and then Giannis's fumble with 10 seconds left. So credit to Harden there.
Yeah, and then the other thing I wanted to say on that is you said unguardable shots. If only Milwaukee had a 7-foot super freak with the lateral mobility and length to disrupt Kevin Durant. Like it is shocking. I'm using all of these crazy words over and over again, and I realize it, but it's dumbfounding that Giannis has not taken. Yeah, well, you see, Kawhi decides in game 5, game 6, game 7. Okay, I'm getting Doncic now, and you're getting locked up, sir. Okay, I'm guarding Mitchell now. You're getting locked up, sir. And Giannis last year didn't really take the Butler assignment, and now this year he's not really taking the Kevin Durant assignment. If he's your number one guy, if he won defensive player the last year, if he is on the all defensive team this year, he should relish that matchup, right? There's a reason you take pride in your defense. You have to if you're going to be part of those all defensive teams. He's a great defender. He blocked a KD jump shot early in this year, which was like no one saw that coming. But no one can ever stop KD, and to a degree, you can't contain him either. But Giannis was made in a lab, him and Anthony Davis, essentially, to be the guys who you could put on a Kevin Durant and at least bother him, right? He's same height, same length. He can move well. I would even say Giannis has a couple pounds on Kevin as well and could be physical with him. But Giannis decides he doesn't want to expend that maximum level of energy on defense, and he'd rather sit in the corner guarding Landry Shamet. Like, I don't understand. And 100% Mike Budenholzer is gone if Milwaukee doesn't win this series, because they've had him for quite a few years now. He refuses to make adjustments in the playoffs. Great regular season coach, but it really feels like one of those Dwayne Casey, Mark Jackson situations where you bring in Steve Kerr, you bring in Nick Nurse, and those guys just have something in them to elevate that team just to the next level, right? Budenholzer, great coach, fantastic coach, really decorated. But he kind of just ceilings out at the second round. And so you need to make that adjustment to find even the Clippers finally firing Doc Rivers. Tyronn Lue, we'll see how he does with the Clippers team, but he did it with the Cavs, right? It's that coach that can just somehow manage to get to the next level, either through adjustments, either through motivation. I don't know what it is, but it's a secret sauce, and Budenholzer doesn't have it. And if the Bucks don't win this and prove me wrong, then he's definitely gone, because that's the place where you have to make the adjustment. Otherwise, Drew, Middleton, Giannis, all these guys are locked in, and then the core or the supporting cast rotates a little bit around them. But there's not much else you can go if you're Milwaukee, and they have to win game 6 at the bare minimum, because I believe Harden, totally injured, they should have been going at him, not one-on-one, but put him in a screen and roll every time. Because and Giannis has got to do something better than a fadeaway in the post. Like, just turn around and I don't know. I don't know, man.
I mean, I'm sure he's thinking this guy's going to flop as soon as I take a step towards the basket, but the refs weren't that in Harden's favor. You've got to like salivate over that matchup. And there's something from Giannis, like that LeBron, that Kawhi, like clutch factor and desire we're not really seeing, eh?
Nope. We'll go back to him, 45-minute player, right? And I think if he's not going to be the closer, then he at the very least has to decide, okay, in those last 3 minutes, if I'm not the offensive creator, I can give that to Middleton and Drew, then I should be the guy who goes and takes Kevin Durant out of this game, or at least try his best, because I think he can do a lot better than PJ Tucker or Chris Middleton. I cannot believe he hasn't guarded him more in this series. maybe we'll see in Game 6 as their last case scenario, right?
Yeah, tipping off in what, 2 hours?
Yeah,
Hour and a half?
we'll see. Maybe we'll have a emergency pod late at night featuring Drunk Max and and heat exhaustion Owen if Katie does something remarkable again.
Yeah, if not, maybe everything we'll have said will have not applied whatsoever by the time this is up on YouTube.
Yeah.
But we'll see, and we'll be right back to wrap up the show. And we're back. I ended that last segment a bit prematurely. Sorry, bud. I know you've still got some basketball stuff to cover.
Yeah, really quickly fired off here. We had some firings and some departures of coaches. Scott Brooks out in Washington. I think they'll look to go a little bit more development with the next coach, the young team. We could see Bradley Beal on the move there, Russell Westbrook as well. Yeah, they couldn't get it done. Really tough year for them, but obviously looking for something different. Stan Van Gundy out in New Orleans after 1 year. He just didn't do a great job. They were a terrible defensive team, despite having some pretty solid defenders in Bledsoe, Ball, Ingram. Zion has the potential, Steven Adams. So it'll be interesting to see what it looks like next year. Could be interesting if they get Mike D'Antoni, someone like that, a little bit more offensively minded. But the Pelicans team is probably the number one job people are looking for. That's what I thought, at least, until about an hour ago. Rick Carlisle announces that he is departing from the Dallas Mavericks. And so that job's obviously up there. Luka Doncic, why not, right? But so some big job opportunities out there for potential coaching candidates. And surprising. Dallas has had a lot of movement this past week, a lot of frustrations after this series, and couple articles nailing GM, especially Donnie Nelson, who was also fired this week. But they thought KP was going to be more, and they made some bad trades, losing Seth Curry, losing, now it's escaping me, the other shot creator that they had, and bringing in Josh Richardson. But it wasn't enough. They couldn't change it. Same result, losing to the Clippers in the first round. And so Dallas has got some personnel changes to make, and I imagine Luka Doncic is going to have a pretty big input into that, because his extension, he's eligible for it this summer, I believe, the max rookie scale extension. And so he's going to want to see that some changes are being made and some people are being brought in that he accepts at the very minimum. So some important times for Dallas to make sure that they're keeping their young superstar happy. That's it for basketball. Let's transition into our Talkin Hockey segment, where the Montreal Canadiens are not dead. They win a game in this series, a 3-2 win, where they get a great effort out of Demon Jeff Petrie, so loaded up on painkillers that his eyes were a completely different color. It was quite freaky. And the Canadiens continue to show heart. And I'm happy for them, just that they're experiencing the success, but overall, I still want them to lose. And yeah, there was a muffin there that Fleury probably should have had in that second goal in the first period. But besides that, Canadiens, right? Very different team playing with the lead versus playing from behind. And so that first goal is going to be really important in every game in this series.
Yeah, I thought in the first game, it really showed that the Canadiens hadn't yet played a team whose offense could come from the blue line. 3 of the 4 Vegas goals being scored by defensemen, or maybe 2 of the 4, and then another was like a shot pass from the blue line, and the 4th wasn't scored by a defenseman. Either way, a ton of Vegas offense coming there. But then when and they also had a really easy time moving the puck through like the seams, like across ice passes. I saw it flying through the Montreal zone, through center ice way too easily. Game 1. Game 2, I saw the Habs wings seem to be a little tighter on the blue line when Vegas had offensive zone possession. And I saw a lot less Vegas pucks getting through the middle of the ice. And once that had tightened up, Vegas had to dig deep to look for offense, because the Montreal team is a lot more conservative, stay at home, play traditional system style than their last opponents, the Colorado Avalanche, which is where most of the Vegas offense came from. And they also struggled to get it going at times against the Minnesota Wild. So still managed to find some answers later into the game. We'll see that how that carries into game 3. But series split 1-1, not the momentum sitting more on the Habs side of the fence. One strong first period from Vegas, and that's totally switched around. But not too sure where this series sits.
I guess we will see then. I still think Vegas is going to take it. They're a team that's just been able to adjust consistently. I liken it to you and I playing tennis, where you tend to be the one trying to dictate play and attacking, and I play a bit more defensive style. But then myself playing with another friend of mine, he plays a more defensive style, and then when I have to play that dictating attacking type of tennis, I'm not used to it. And I feel like that applies a little bit to Vegas, where they have been a team sitting back and letting offensive teams come towards them and playing a little bit more defensive, solid hockey. But now that they're up against a team that's matching that style and they are starting to have to dictate play, it's a role that they're not used to yet. But I think they'll make that adjustment because they've been doing very well at adjusting so far. The other series, which we will get a game 3 for tonight, is between the Lightning and the Islanders. And after New York comes out and makes a fantastic statement in game 1, the Lightning, of course, respond. This is it's a top tier team, right? This is what you do when you're the defending Stanley Cup champions. The hockey was way cleaner, less sloppiness from Tampa Bay. And they get a little bit of a bonus when you've got 2 extra players on the ice for that 1 goal, and Trotz was not too happy about that. But there's some poor officiating both ways in this game, and Tampa was able to solve the Islanders in game 2, and I guess we'll see if they can continue to do that 3 more times in this series.
Yeah, defending Stanley Cup champs the way, for the most part, they've played in this playoffs. I think it's funny, if Colorado had rolled over the Golden Knights, there would be some contesting over this position. But as is, I think you have to say the Lightning are the number 1 team in the league until proven otherwise. And maybe the Islanders will. They've done it once in this series, and that's for sure their style of hockey, to just throttle it, slow it down, and squeeze out a win. But until proven otherwise, this team is number 1, and game 2, just an example of that.
Yep. And yeah, we'll see what happens. I think Varlamov is good to go for game 3 after Braden Point gets shoved into the netminder by New York's own defenseman. Wasn't a very smart play in all regards. Kind of weird that Point gets the penalty there, but alas, we move on. If you're Tampa, if you win, it's fine. We'll take it. And I guess we'll see what happens in game 3 tonight. Looking forward to that one. Max, you had a little bit of tennis talk for us here. Take it away.
Yeah, last Sunday, I was wrapping up the French Open, and here we are 11 days away, 10 when this goes up on YouTube, Spotify, whatever you're listening to, from Wimbledon. And it's been a very short grass season. I wanted to take a look and cover what's going on briefly, but there's really not too much. We've got 2 ATP, this is all ATP, 500 level tournaments going on this way, the Cinch, also known as Queen's Club, and the Halle in Germany. And that's so far, there's 2 250 level ones kicking off this week, next week. I think Medvedev is the only high ranked profile player I've seen registered in that, and that's because he took a first round loss in the Halle, I believe. But yeah, it's before getting into the play at the tournaments, I guess can just say it's mostly the decision by the French Open to postpone everything a week. And it ran without a hitch and was an amazing tournament. So it's hard to criticize them there, but as a result, we're seeing some wear and tear. We're seeing, I mean, a lot of the names like Djokovic, Tsitsipas, were not seen playing at all before Wimbledon. So you hope they've got some nice home grass courts to get adjusted on and they'll be ready before the big one. And then the other big name, of course, Nadal, withdrawing from both Wimbledon and the Olympics, which, considering he's withdrawing from the Olympics as well, says a lot about the wear and tear, and that it's more than something he just needs one extra week of rest for that can't quite make the cut for Wimbledon. And as he said in his statement, it's a long-term decision. This is so he hopefully remains I'd say surpasses the benchmark set by Federer. So for how long a player can remain competitive for. But yeah, an unfortunate withdrawal, and I'm a bit anxious heading into grass season just without a ton going on and not really knowing what we're going to get out of the big names. In both draws going on in the Halle and the Queens, the conditions for a dark horse to emerge, which could be a huge storyline going to Wimbledon, are there. We've had a lot of upsets already. I mentioned Medvedev going out. Obviously, Felix taking out Federer, another big one. Zverev lost today. And then on the London Queen's side, we had Andy Murray losing to Berrettini, though I'm not sure you can call that an upset as Berrettini's the number 1 seed in the tournament. And we had the Italian Sinner going out in the first round as well to a Jack Draper. I mentioned Felix in there getting the win over Federer, so he's off to the third round. Chapo also in London made it past into the third round today, playing solid tennis. He didn't have a single break point and looked pretty steady throughout most of the match. So exciting for our boys for sure, but yeah, I don't know. I'm a little anxious heading into Wimbledon.
Yeah, it's not a lot of run up for a lot of these players, but in the end, they're all in the same boat. They're all on the same playing field. I saw Osaka also pulled out of Wimbledon today, but she will participate in the Olympics. But with
Japan, of course.
Yeah, with 2 of these major competitors, one on the men's, one on the women's side, pulling out, obviously it's unfortunate that we're not going to see some of the top tier tennis at that tournament, but it does open the playing field. And something that I said earlier, and it's a take that I'll continue to sit on, is I think the Canadiens perform the best on grass and obviously hard court, but grass I think is much more suited to their strengths as opposed to clay. And I think there's an opportunity here for Dennis, for Felix, for Milos, for Bianca, Layla, one of those 5. Definitely, I think there's a chance for them to make a fairly deep run at Wimbledon, as we've seen to see from Canadiens the last couple of years, 5-6 years. There's been at one point or another one of our young stars making a run. So I'm hoping that can be replicated again this year. I am really excited to tune in to watch them play, because Wimbledon, it's just always a good time. It's right in the middle of the summer. You just get good vibes from that tournament and some great scenery. So definitely looking forward to it.
Yeah. On that note, a happy birthday to Bianca and condolences on the birthday loss. But yeah, fingers crossed. I was really excited to see Chapo at the French Open after that match he put up against Nadal earlier in the clay season, and was very disappointed not to see it, but he looks back at 100%. So really excited for Wimbledon. And yeah, that wraps up all the tennis talk I got. I think we got baseball to close out the show.
Yeah, I previewed it at the beginning of the show, but the Jays bullpen is pee poo poo. It's let them down so many times this past week, and some really, really tough losses to the Red Sox, to the Yankees. It can't be happening, especially with the offense operating and the starting pitching operating at the way it's been operating. So as we near the MLB trade deadline, definitely look for the Blue Jays to add a ton of arms, because they believe that they can be contenders this year. And the bullpens really let them down up until this point. So that's something to keep an eye out going forward. And that's really all I have in the baseball segment. Fernando Tatis hit an absolute bomb the other day, 477 feet. Had to shut out that. But besides that, all I got for baseball, and that's all we got for this podcast. So thank you everyone for listening once again. We appreciate each and every one of you. Go check out the YouTube, check out Twitter, check out Spotify, Apple Podcast, share with your friends, converse with us. Let us know your takes. We want to engage in that discussion. And most of all, wish Max luck at the bar tonight. You'll be in my thoughts, buddy.
I'll need it, boys. Thanks, bud. Sports Store signing out.